situation with the creation of the London and Manchester Business Schools, equivalents of the celebrated Harvard Business School in the States. Since then, a host of establishments, both public and private, have been set up. But just how effective are they? Two separate reports to be published this week, one by John Constable, a visiting professor at Cranfield Management School, and another by Charles Handy, a visiting professor at the London Business School. Both show that despite 20 years of effort, we've still got a lot to learn. Paul Burden reports.
Leverin, senior executive with the industrial conglomerate BET, is vacating his chair in the office for a fortnight in a country seat, the stately Gothic pile of Ashridge College. He's taking a management education course, a routine experience for his company, but not at all typical of British industry generally. The truth is that Britain compares very badly with our major competitors in our spending on management education and in the qualifications of our managers. Professor Handy's report to the NEDC, published later this week, will show that only 20% of British managers have a degree or professional qualification. In Germany, 60% of senior managers have degrees. In the United States, the figure is over 80%. The average British company spends a minute 0.15% of turnover on training. By comparison, a typical German company spends 12 times as much. And the average US company will spend about 6 times as much training its people as will its British competitor. Another report to be published next week takes a critical look at what is available on the British training market. Its author is Professor John Constable.
We produce about 12,000 people a year in this country with an undergraduate degree, a postgraduate degree, a higher national diploma, or a diploma in management studies. So that's effectively higher education type awards. We need about 90,000 new entrants into the managerial cadre of the country each year. Now, of course, there are other forms of training than those I described, but there's a long gap between 12,000 and 90,000. And many of the people who become managers, first of all, have not had any educational training in management before they start, and secondly, don't get any whilst they are managers.
So why is the attitude of British industry to management education so damagingly short-sighted? In America, typically someone in Leverin's position would have a postgraduate degree like the MBA, the Master of Business Administration. What has prevented him from becoming similarly qualified?
I would very much like to have had the opportunity to do an MBA course when I was younger. Now, yes, I'd like the opportunity, but I think it's impractical.
Are you going to say you don't want to...
As time goes by and one becomes more senior within an organisation, one's value to an organisation increases, and it becomes more difficult to release you to go on management training.
So why aren't more companies using business schools?
Partly because they haven't heard of us, partly because they prefer to poach already developed people from other organisations, partly because they see it as a cost and not a benefit, and they're not persuaded of its virtue and value, and partly because they're too busy to divert their meagre management resources into offline activity, even though we'd argue it can usually result in greater effectiveness when they go back.
Establishments like the prestigious London Business School have been offering British managers American-style MBA degrees since 1966.
These are sales.
They are not, they say, short of applicants for places. More than 24 universities and colleges now offer similar degrees. But what business schools have failed to do is persuade industry that they are an essential service. There is a growing suspicion that Britain is not necessarily suited to an American model of education.
We had no paradigm for business schools in the United Kingdom, which meant that we went to the obvious place to learn, the United States. And we took straight copies of their very elitist Ivy League schools, such as Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, and so on. And we brought those copies straight back to the United Kingdom and implanted them.
In fact, places like Ashridge College had developed a homegrown approach to management education before the arrival of the American system. Its principal is Philip Sadler.
We have to remember there was only one model in the world in the 1960s for business education, which was the American model. So if we were going to borrow, and there was nowhere else to borrow from, what I regret is that we didn't try to grow our own system of management education based on the British culture and the needs of British industry.
Ashridge was created by private industry. Its courses are specifically designed to meet the needs of British business. Its approach is now being recommended by Professor John Constable in his report on the future of management training.
What we have been told very strongly in our survey is that what the customers want, and that's both employers and individuals, is flexible, modular education that they can fit into their working lives. They don't want to have to go away for long periods of full-time study.
Ashridge is now planning its own MBA course, which will be modular, half the length of existing courses, and aimed at company-sponsored candidates. The students will apply their new knowledge in their own jobs while they're still studying. But will Ashridge be any more successful than other business schools in establishing the MBA as the goal of every aspiring young British manager? Or is a more radical rethink required, as Cyril Levicki believes?
What worries me is that the MBA has become truly what it stands for. It's become a master of business administration. What we've done is we've learnt to concentrate on administration, on the set formulas of the few things we do know that are certain. And in teaching these formal things, we've actually driven out the capacity for flair, the ability to dream, the ability to have new ideas, to take risks, to take new products, and to make them work in the marketplace. That's the great sadness of what we're doing in our business schools today.